Unlike most other tech YouTubers, I'm not at a level yet where I can get a new phone every few months. So when I was able to upgrade from my iPhone 6s Plus to my iPhone XS Max, I was very excited. And then shortly after, Google decided to send me their new Pixel 3, which just made me completely ecstatic. So using these new flagship devices back to back has kind of been like sensory overload considering what I was using previously. So I wanted to share my experience with you guys and wanted to point out what I like and what I dislike about both of these phones. One of the things I feel iPhones always had over Android devices was just their overall build quality. There was a time not all flagship Android devices were this slab of glass and metal like the iPhone was since the iPhone 4. And when Google first released their first Pixel phone, it was a good first try, but there was certainly some room for improvement. Even though Pixel 2 was a little lackluster compared to its competition build quality wise. But now the Pixel 3, this phone does have the build quality deserving of a flagship. Now the Pixel 3's build quality isn't better than the iPhone XS, but it is up there and even gives the iPhone XR a run for its money. One of the reasons why I like the Pixel 3 so much is because it's been thoughtfully designed to be used even without a case. Like I mentioned in my iPhone XS Max video, the iPhone XS just isn't designed to be used without a case. It's way too round, it's way too slippery, and it's hard to know which way is up or down. Whereas the Pixel 3 has this optional always on display, so you never end up picking this phone up upside down. All of the physical control buttons on the right side, making this an awesome one-handed device. The chance for that just makes it super easy to hold on to, and the new textured back also gives you a good amount of grip in the hand. And you don't have to worry about the Pixel 3 sliding around on the table when you place it down. And not to mention the minimal camera hump. Now when the Pixel 3 first came out, there were a lot of people saying that the new edge back scratched way too easily. But I've been using this phone as my daily driver for the last few weeks and the back looks perfectly fine to me. So for an $800 phone, the build quality on the Pixel 3 does deliver this time around. Media consumption on the Pixel 3 is also up there with the iPhone XS Max. Since they both have OLED panels provided by Samsung, you're getting comparable vibrant colors and rich dark blacks that otherwise wouldn't be possible on LCD screens. But something that I really don't like about the Pixel 3 when watching videos with it is just how much the dual frontward firing speakers vibrate the phone. It just makes it much harder to focus on or get lost in the videos you're watching than with the iPhone. But somewhere the Pixel 3 does fall short is its battery life. Plainly said, the Pixel 3 is not an all-day phone for the way I use it. But the Pixel 3 does offset this poor battery life by coming included with a fast charger right in the box. Something that the $1,000 plus iPhone doesn't. And if you want fast charging on your iPhone, then you're going to have to pay an additional $70. But I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the new Pixel stand. Like I've mentioned in the past, I've never really cared for wireless charging because it wasn't as fast and was wasteful compared to having a wired charger. But with the new Pixel stand, you still get rapid charging with the Pixel 3. When you drop a Pixel 3 in, the stand is going to start charging your phone at 10 watts instead of 5 watts like other cheap chargers. So you're truly getting the convenience of wireless charging without sacrificing speed. And this is truly impressive because for the time being, there isn't an accessory for the iPhone that can match this. The AirPower is nowhere to be found, and even though Logitech does sell a similar standing wireless charger for the iPhone that charges it at 7.5 watts, that charger still wirelessly charges the iPhone slower than if it had a wired connection. So what I'm saying is, the new Pixel stand is to the Pixel 3 like AirPods are to an iPhone. They're a must-have accessory that elevates your user experience, and you're not going to want to live without it after you've gotten so used to it. But now let's get back to the phones. The line between Android and iPhone has increasingly blurred over the years because they each take from one another. Android has always given the user as many customization options as possible, but sometimes it can get a little overwhelming and it can take a bit of trial and error to get your phone perfectly dialed in to how you want it. I'm still messing around with the settings and home screen on my Pixel 3 to get it just right. The iPhone, on the other hand, has always tried to make things as simple as possible, but does limit the user. One of my biggest gripes with the iPhone is that you can't place apps on the bottom half of the screen unless you have extra apps up top pushing them down for you. Even though it did take me a little while to get used to navigating through the iPhone XS Max, I've grown to really like the new gesture-based navigation. It's very fluid, but it does force you to use two hands on your iPhone more often than not. The virtual home button on the Pixel 3 is fine, but one of the things I dislike most about Android right now is multitasking. More often than not, I end up picking the wrong app or accidentally opening the app drawer. So even though stock Android is much easier to use these days, I still feel the iPhone still gives you a cleaner and easier user experience, albeit more limited. Now, even though I'm not a diehard Android or Apple fanboy, one of the things that always made me apprehensive about switching to an Android device these days was the rear-mounted fingerprint sensor on most devices. After a few days, I did get used to this rear-mounted sensor, but I did notice I had significantly more failed attempts than what I was used to when I had my iPhone 6s Plus. And since I'm pretty indifferent when it comes to Face ID, you can say I'm really hoping under-screen fingerprint sensors really catch on and improve in the next year or so. But one of the things I really like about the Pixel 3 is the Active Edge. I greatly prefer Google Assistant over Siri. I can trust Google Assistant to correctly act on my voice commands than Siri. That's why I still mainly use Google Assistant on my iPhone and why I have so many Google Homes around the house. And just being able to squeeze the Pixel 3 and then start talking is another underrated feature. Google's new call screening feature on the Pixel 3 is also a pretty cool concept, and I feel it has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, right now, since the general public just isn't educated on this call screening feature, they either just end up hanging up or they proceed to leave a voicemail. So for the time being, the call screening feature has been a pretty cool feature to play around with for the first week I've had the phone, but now I just don't use it because I found it's faster to either reject or just answer the call myself. But now let's talk about the cameras. Even though the Pixel 3 only has a single camera, I think it manages to capture better stills than the iPhone. Keyword being stills. The Pixel 3 manages to capture more color accurate stills than the iPhone. The Pixel 3 also manages to capture a much wider field of view than the iPhone, making it much better for both selfies and indoor use. Google is also doing a lot with software. They have much better and sharper edge detection than iPhone's portrait mode, but Google does like to get carried away with their bokeh effect. So much in fact that I have to go in and manually reduce it most of the time. I just feel Google is trying too hard and going, hey, we can do bokeh effect too, and we only have one lens. But keeping on the topic of Google software, I also really like the Pixel 3 because of all of the baked-in panoramic effects. Google software does a really good job of stitching together photos and making them look really good while also avoiding creating weird artifacts. But if you take a second to look closer, you'll notice it doesn't look like a real picture. It starts to look more like a render than a photograph. But still, as time goes on, Google will continue to improve on this. But even though the Pixel 3 does take some great stills, I think the iPhone still takes much better looking video. I just can't help but notice the Pixel 3's video is a little more washed out, the foreground and background separation is a little weak, and to me, the image just isn't as crisp as the iPhone. But overall, even though phone updates are becoming more and more incremental, it's obvious Google is really trying to catch up with Apple by really improving their hardware, but also pushing the boundaries regarding what can be done through software. When Apple first released their iPhone, the biggest thing they had going for them was that they made their own hardware and were able to fully optimize it with their own software. They've also done a very good job over the years of building their own ecosystem of products and services that make you less likely to leave their walled garden, which means you end up giving Apple more and more of your money. Google, on the other hand, took a completely different approach when it came to Android. Their operating system was open sourced that any manufacturer could use for free. Google's main objective was just to get as many people as possible to use their digital services. But now, Google is taking a more Apple approach when it comes to releasing their own hardware like their new Pixel 3, and they're really trying to compete with their own ecosystem through their physical and digital products. And since phone upgrades these days are becoming more and more incremental, ecosystems and digital services like cloud storage, voice assistants, and timely updates are more important than ever when it comes to choosing your next phone. And I feel the line between Android, mainly the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL, and iPhone is becoming increasingly blurred. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. Support the channel by clicking on the links down below, and I'll catch you next time.